Look, we all knew Jim Comey was a problem. We all knew that he did all kinds of things, was out to get President Trump. We knew he was involved in changing the intelligence community assessment back in 2016. And of course, before the election, and now based on the notes we've got and what the good work that Ms. Halligan's doing there in the Eastern District of Virginia, we learned that he knew that Clinton, this was all political. You know, the whole dossier, remember, it was the Clinton campaign who hired the law firm Perkins Coie, who hired the public relations firm Fusion GPS, who hired a foreigner, Christopher Steele, who wrote a document that was garbage, and yet Comey's FBI used it to go as the basis to go spy on President Trump's campaign. So Comey knew all this stuff. And he knew what Clinton was up to. And we all know one thing, because we saw this with Mr. Brennan a couple of weeks ago. It's why we did a referral for him. You're not supposed to lie, but you're definitely not supposed to lie when you're under oath talking to Congress. And you can be cute like Mr. Comey always thinks he is. You know, he's the same guy who did he's the same guy who on the beach arranged the stuff and said, I just stumbled upon the 8647, all this stuff. So like, come on. We all get this guy. And remember, too, because the left always points to when Comey came out a couple weeks or before the election and said he was going to reopen the investigation into Clinton, the reason he did all that is because everyone at the time thought Clinton was going to win. Comey thought she was going to win. And this was something I think, this is what I believe, that he did as a way to say, I was just being so fair, because he thought the game was already over and Clinton was going to win this thing. So I think he's been Comey the whole way through.
All right, guys, it is Election Day. Today, also, former Vice President Dick Cheney passed away. Our condolences to his family. Thanks for his service to the country. Whether or not you liked Cheney or not, and I know obviously he draws a lot of people into a debate about neocon and intervention, but you got to tell that I will say this: Dick Cheney loved this country. He served it admirably as a congressman, a White House chief of staff, a defense secretary, vice president. So I appreciate his service to this country, and my condolences, as I said, to his family as they deal with his passing. It is Election Day. We'll get into this with pollster Brent Buchanan of Cygnal, the latest. If you want to know where those races stand, what we should make of it, what we should expect in just a little bit, stay with us on this. It is day 35 of the shutdown. Today ties the longest record. Tomorrow, we will go into they'll break the record for the longest day. Congressman Jim Jordan is here. He's the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. I'm going to ask him about the shutdown, but I'm also going to ask him about some new stuff that came out about Jim Comey and Arctic Frost and Jack Smith, the what they gleaned and what the steps forward are to get the information, because it's interesting. Jack Smith, the guy who prosecuted Trump, and Arctic Frost all tied together, and Jim Jordan is going to break it all down. Tomorrow on Wednesday, the Supreme Court is going to hear this case on Trump's tariff. We'll break that down tomorrow. By the way, it's going to be interesting. Trump was out there last night doing teletown halls in Virginia and in New Jersey, trying to make the final push. He actually endorsed Cuomo. We'll see if that helps over the push. By the way, remember this, tonight at 8 o'clock, just a little bit from now, we are going live. Dan Turntime, my colleague in the morning meeting, will join us. Batya Ungar-Sargon, she will join us as well. We'll have all the results. 8 o'clock live on my YouTube channel. Join in the chat. Tell me what you think, what you're looking for. We'll break it all down as results come in. Virginia closes at 7, New Jersey at 8, New York at 9, California, who cares? I'm just kidding. But before I bring in Jim Jordan, I got to show you this response. When John Brennan, the former CIA director, had this response when he was asked about the Hunter Biden letter. Take a listen to him melting down when approached by this.
Why didn't you remember on the Hunter Biden letter? Why? Because I think and you misrepresented that. We never said it was disinformation. We said it was Russian influence operations, which is what they do. There's a big difference between influence operations. No, you don't know that.
Yes, Comey knew.
Comey knew.
The literature said it had all marks.
By the way, as I mentioned, Jim Jordan coming up tomorrow. Curtis Hoka, the Media Research Center, will help break down the election results and talk about KJP's book tour. We got a great panel on Thursday. Victor Davis Hanson on Friday. Continue to subscribe across platforms. We are growing unbelievably because of you. All right, I got Jim Jordan coming up, and then pollster Brent Buchanan. Before that, if you're a snacker, and tonight as you're watching, if you want to snack along with us and watch live, get yourself a Masa Chip. These things are absolutely amazing. Chips and all sorts of snack food used to be cooked in beef tallow, right? And then they went to ultra-processed seed oils. Bad. That's what makes it. That's what gives you that bloating and that cramping and that. You know what? These things, I love them. I got to meet the owners at a Maha event with Bobby Kennedy before his hearing, February this year. I was like, guys, I'm so excited to try these. I've seen them on Instagram. Loved them from the moment, from the jump. Only 3 ingredients, right? You got corn, salt, and tallow. That is it. That's why they are so good. They're crunchier, they're tastier, and they are loved by thousands of Maha lovers. Once you try them, you will not forget. I'm telling you, go to masachips.com/Sean and use code Sean for 25% off. Sean, I've spelled the right way, SEAN. But I'm telling you, trust me, get the variety pack because you got the original, the blue, habanero, lime. I mean, the flavors are amazing. I started with the variety pack. Highly recommend it. Masa Chips, MASA chips.com/Sean, code word Sean for 25% off your first order. And I would stock up, my friends. It's worth that 25% because you're going to love them and you're going to want more. Use that first code, masachips.com/Sean. Use code Sean, 25% off. And then at the end of the night, when you're ready to go to bed, what am I going to tell you? Look at this. I'm reaching back. I keep crushing more and more bags. Look at this, folks. This is legit. All of these bags of Beam Dream Powder, I've crushed them. I've crushed this one is the brownie battered flavor. These are all the cocoa ones. I've crushed them all. I love this stuff. I cannot go to sleep without taking it because it's that good. Every night when I fall asleep, I take a scoop of the Beam Dream Powder. It's got reishi, magnesium, apigenin, L-theanine, melatonin, all in one. And the flavors are to die for. I'm not kidding. I love tasting this stuff. I put it in water, 30 seconds in the microwave. Some people just take it cold. Some people put it in milk. I don't care. I've tried it all. You can't go wrong. 30 minutes later, your head hits the pillow. You go to sleep. You wake up feeling refreshed and ready to go. I get asked more about Beam than anything else I've talked about. People go, do you really take it? Yes, that's why I show you the bags. I put it on Instagram, taking it at night. I literally love this stuff. I cannot sleep without it. So I travel with it. It's that important to me. Beam Dream Powder. So here's the thing. Go to shopbeam.com. We are having a cyber sale right now. This is getting ahead of Black Friday. It's only for 48 hours and only to you guys. That's what I'm talking about. 50% off. This is the deal you will get nowhere else. This is Beam's cyber 48-hour sale. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code Spicer. 50% off during Beam's cyber sale. Trust me, do not wait. 48 hours only for Beam's cyber sale. 50% off. This deal will not get better. I've not had a better deal on Beam's Dream Powder the entire time that Beam has been a sponsor of the show. Get it, stock up on it. Beam's Dream Powder, shopbeam.com/Spicer, code word Spicer. All right, without further ado, let me bring in the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Jim Jordan. Chairman Jordan, good to see you again. Thanks for being with us.
You bet.
I want to start with this sort of bombshell that John Solomon put out at Just the News. He reveals that Comey expected to work for President-elect Clinton, knew that the top aide was leaking and talking to the media. Lindsay Halligan, the Eastern District U.S. Attorney, is now responding to a lot of these things saying, hey, Comey, you knew a lot of this stuff was happening. You aided and abetted it. What is your takeaway on this, and how does it impact anything that you guys might do on your side?
Well, look, we all knew Jim Comey was a problem. We all knew that he did all kinds of things, was out to get President Trump. We knew he was involved in changing the intelligence community assessment back in 2016. And of course, before the election, and now based on the notes we've got and what the good work that Ms. Halligan's doing there in the Eastern District of Virginia, we learned that he knew that Clinton, this was all political. You know, the whole dossier, remember, it was a Clinton campaign who hired the law firm Perkins Coie, who hired the public relations firm Fusion GPS, who hired a foreigner, Christopher Steele, who wrote a document that was garbage, and yet Comey's FBI used it to go as the basis to go spy on President Trump's campaign. So Comey knew all this stuff, and he knew what Clinton was up to, and the notes now reveal that. So, this is just Jim Comey being Jim Comey. Thinks he's better than the rest of us, thinks he's smarter than the rest of us, and of course, it looks like he wasn't square when he testified in front of Congress. That's one of the charges against him. When he was taking questions from Senator Cruz. So Comey's Comey, and we'll see what happens as this prosecution moves forward.
When he starts discussing the response to some of these questions that he's been asked, he says I was being literally true, and I'm wondering if that's trying to be cute by half, which is technically I knew it wasn't right what I was answering members of Congress, but I was being literally true? I mean, there's clearly a sleight of hand going on there, right?
Yeah. And who talks that way? I was being literally true. You either being true or you weren't, right? You were telling the truth or you weren't. No, I mean, and we all know one thing, because we saw this with Mr. Brennan a couple of weeks ago. It's why we did a referral for him. You're not supposed to lie, but you're definitely not supposed to lie when you're under oath talking to Congress. And you can be cute like Mr. Comey always thinks he is. He's the same guy who remember, he's the same guy who on the beach arranged the stuff and said, I just stumbled upon the 8647, all this stuff. So come on. We all get this guy. And remember too, because the left always points to when Comey came out a couple weeks or before the election and said he was going to reopen the investigation into Clinton. The reason he did all that is because everyone at the time thought Clinton was going to win. Comey thought she was going to win. And this was something I think, this is what I believe, that he did as a way to say, I was just being so fair, because he thought the game was already over and Clinton was going to win this thing. So I think he's been Comey the whole way through.
All right. I want to move to another gem, Jack Smith.
Yeah.
This is really interesting because according to the New York Times, this is what they say. Mr. Smith has told people in his orbit that he welcomes the opportunity to present the public case against Mr. Trump denied to him by the Supreme Court decision. But he is telling you, the chairman of the committee, the terms in which he will do this.
Yeah.
Basically saying, hey, Jim Jordan, I'll come to you only if you'll allow me to do this in public in a certain way. What is the state of play? Are you requiring him to testify behind closed doors, to be subpoenaed? Are you acquiescing to his apparent public demands that this all happen in public? What is the state of play?
No, our plan is to have him in a deposition format. After we've been getting all the documents, more information keeps coming in. We get more information from the FBI. Once his shutdown's over, it'll be nice because that we'll be able to get the information in a more timely fashion. But we're continuing to get information from the FBI. Of course, Senator Grassley has a whistleblower who's giving information relative to the Arctic Frost investigation, which then became part of the Jack Smith special counsel investigation. So we continue to get that information. We want all the facts. But we want to talk to Mr. Smith in a deposition format, like we did his deputies, like we did Mr. Bratt and Mr. Wyndham. We've already deposed them. They took the fifth 71 and 73 times, respectively. They took the fifth to questions like, was this a political operation designed to harm President Trump? I take the fifth. I refuse to answer on exercise my Fifth Amendment liberties. We ask, how many other people in the Congress did you spy on in addition to what now looks like 12 senators? Who else did you spy on? Who else did you surveil? Who else did you get phone records? I take the fifth. So we want to see what Mr. Smith says when we ask him those kind of questions and others that we're developing as we continue to get information. But this is the way it works. We get the documents, we get the information, we get all the stuff that he got, the 400 and some people and entities he surveilled who were part of the Republican Party. We want to get all that information and then have him in a deposition, ask questions, and then we'll decide if it makes sense for him to be in a public setting.
So for somebody who's watching right now and says, wait a second, Chairman Jordan, this guy, Jack Smith, is saying, I want to do it in public, I want to do it out in the open, and you want me to come behind a closed door. Explain to people watching why a deposition format gets you more than a public hearing per se.
Well, first of all, he wants to do it right away. So, I mean, if we do this right away, before we've got all the documents, we don't know all the questions we want to ask him. So that's one. Second, in a public hearing, it's 5 minutes per member. Takes, 5 hours. That's fine, but it's only 5 minutes that you get. It's tough sometimes to develop the line of question you really want to develop, excuse me, and get the answers that you think that are there in a 5-minute setting. In a deposition format, the way it works in Congress depositions, each side gets 1 hour each. So we'll go 1 hour for Republicans, Democrats get an hour. 1 hour for Republicans again, back to Democrats. It goes back and forth and you get an hour where not just members, but our chief counsel, our lawyers as part of the staff of the Judiciary Committee are asking questions. In fact, they will do most of the deposition with members present. I've probably been in more of these probably than any member of Congress in the last decade. So that's how and it's just a different format where you get more information because you can keep asking on the subject, keep pressing, getting the information that you think is important for the American people to have.
Right, and I wanted you to say that because I think that's the key here, to be able to go back and forth with them over a prolonged period of time. I've been through a few depositions myself, unfortunately. Yeah. It's very different than one member randomly ping-ponging a subject where you're not having the exchange. The Senate is apparently looking at doing a public hearing as well. Do you care whether or not the Senate does their own hearing before you potentially? Okay.
That's up to Senator Grassley. God bless him. So we're getting a bunch of information from the FBI. Senator Grassley is getting some information as well from a whistleblower. That's all fine. If they want to go public, that's up to Senator Grassley, Senator Johnson, and the Judiciary Committee and those individuals in the Senate. That's fine. I know how we want to proceed with our investigation, and this is the way we've done all the others that I've been involved with over the last, like I said, last 10, 12, 15 years.
So in the New York Times piece, it says this, because it's talking about the difference between the Senate approach and your approach. This is the New York Times. It says the smarter play, they said, is to intensify the effort by Republican representatives on Capitol Hill, that would be you and your colleagues, the White House, the Justice Department, and the FBI, to unearth, release, and publicize internal documents that would prove Mr. Smith had engaged in a politically motivated witch hunt. Is that the approach?
Well, that's how the New York Times framed it. What we're trying to do is get the facts, and here are the facts. This is the Jack Smith, Arctic Frost special counsel investigation that got a gag order on President Trump, that raided his home, that took the phone of a sitting member of Congress, surveilled him for a week before they took Scott Perry's phone, took it from him while he's on vacation with his family on the Jersey Shore. This is the same Jack Smith who tried to intimidate a defendant's counsel when they said to Stanley Woodward, "We didn't know you were a Trump guy. We thought you wanted this judge position." This is the same Jack Smith who went out and got the phone logs of 12 United States senators. This is the same Jack Smith whose deputies took the fifth, as I said earlier, 71 and 73 times. And now we find out this is the same Jack Smith who said to, for example, Dan Scavino, "We want your bank records. And oh, by the way, don't tell, we want Ted Cruz's phone records, phone logs. And by the way, AT&T, Verizon, you phone companies, don't tell the member that we got that information. You can't disclose that to him." Are you kidding me? So of course we want all that information, and we want him in a deposition format where we can ask him questions about all that.
When it came out about Arctic Frost, this whole investigation into Republican members, you mentioned some of the phones that were seized. Grassley on the Senate side has released a 2023 document showing that the FBI analyzed phone records of 9 Republican lawmakers. Has there been any account as to why that happened?
No, and it's interesting because it happened, I believe when they did that was May of 23. So Jack Frost had been after this, and they don't really analyze the data that they collected until after they've already indicted President Trump. Later in the summer, they indict President Trump. They don't analyze the phone logs that they got from eight members of the United States Congress. They don't analyze that until later on. So I find all that interesting. One of the things we always do in these investigations is we lay out the timeline, what all happens when this thing was. Arctic Frost gets opened in April of 2022, I believe, and then the Jack Frost gets named in November of 22. Excuse me, April Arctic Frost gets launched earlier. Jack Frost doesn't get, or Jack Smith, Jack Frost, he doesn't get named special counsel until November 18th. What I find interesting about that, by the way, is the election day, I think was November 8th. President Trump announces on November 15th, 2022 that he's running for president. 3 days later, Merrick Garland names Jack Frost. 3 days after President Trump announces he's running, we need a special counsel. And the guy we want is Jack Smith coming in here and doing this. So, I find all that interesting. And it's, again, why we think it's important that Jack Smith come in and sit for a deposition.
When Pam Bondi says there'll be accountability, do you think that it's helpful that you guys go first, get a lot of this information out, hand it, and refer it over to DOJ? Or is she potentially moving on her own parallel track?
All I know is we got to do what we're required to do under the Constitution, which is oversight. I'll use a different example. John Brennan. We did a referral for him, criminal referral, 2.5 weeks ago. I tell people we don't do these very often. The facts have to be there. And with this guy, they were there. And so we sent that over to Attorney General Bondi. We'll see what she does. What I know is, as I said earlier, you're not supposed to lie. You're definitely not supposed to lie when you're under oath talking to Congress. And it looks like John Brennan did just that. He said he wasn't involved with the dossier, didn't want the dossier in the intelligence community assessment. This summer, Tulsi Gabbard declassifies and releases a report by the House Intelligence Committee from several years ago, which shows just the opposite. It says in there, John Brennan put in writing, include the dossier in the ICA assessment. And maybe more importantly, they relate a story where a CIA official comes up to Mr. Brennan and says, Director, we shouldn't include this dossier. It just doesn't hold up. There's no intelligence to support this thing. This just doesn't fit. And John Brennan's response was, yeah, but doesn't it ring true? Showing and displaying his motivation, like, I don't care. It sounds like what I want it to sound like. We're going after Trump. So, yeah, we referred him to the Justice Department, and we'll see what they decide to do with that. But I think it's clear he lied to us.
There are 51 intelligence, quote unquote, officials that said that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. Whether they lied or didn't know the truth, they had a government issued security clearance. Is that just something that they should have the security clearances stripped as Trump has done? Or should they face some kind of criminal prosecution for using the sort of the premature of I have a government security clearance, I'm an intelligence official, and this is Russian disinformation?
Well, I certainly support them having their security clearance taken by as the White House did. I appreciate what President Trump did there. Appreciate what President Trump's done on so many things. But whether there's crime there, I doubt. But I leave that to the Justice Department. But it's interesting, Sean, you bring that up, because it was in that context that we were deposing Mr. Brennan. We brought him in our investigation of these 51 intel officials, where we learned all this, because we got information from the government, and we were able to put this together. So we're deposing him relative to that investigation, and it's in that investigation where we get into the dossier from earlier, where he says things that just aren't true. So I find that, Mr. Brennan wasn't square with the American people when he signed onto that letter with 51. He wasn't square to us when we asked him about the dossier. And frankly, I don't think he was square with then Congressman Gowdy when Trey asked him questions several years ago about the dossier. So I think there's a pattern with John Brennan. And again, we lay all that out in the letter that we sent to Attorney General Bondi.
By the way, that makes the case again about why a deposition matters, because this is the kind of format that you get. The last thing I want to ask you about, Chairman, is the shutdown. Beyond all of your investigative work, you're obviously a fairly well-known conservative. And so there's now deals in the rumor mill, in the ether, being floated that says, hey, we'll have a short-term kind of CR. We'll open the government back up till, who knows, December, January. We'll give the Dems a vote on these ACA things and potentially have what they call a mini bust, which is 3 of the appropriation bills. Is that a construct that you could buy into? Or what, is there a red flag in that deal? Or what would be the flag or the problem?
Well, I mean, the problem is if they just extend these Obamacare subsidies. I mean, it's like, I always tell people, remember, everything they told us about Obamacare turned out to be false. Like your plan, keep your plan. Like your doctor, keep your doctor. Premiums are going to go down. President Obama told us premiums will go down on average $1,500. Well, if that's the case, why do they need to do this subsidy, then expand this subsidy, and then extend this subsidy, and now extend it again? Well, I mean, come on.
But if the deal is just a vote, if all the Dems get is a vote, you're okay with that. If it's, hey, you guys get your vote, you'll vote it down but the deal, as I understand it, that being floated would be, we open the government back up for, December, January. The Dems get a guaranteed vote on these subsidies to throw good money after bad. And then maybe we have 3 of the appropriations bills move.
Yeah, we'll see. I think the 3 appropriation bills, I think those are pretty settled. I don't know that there's a big problem there. I think the big concern could potentially be, what's the date of the CR? Because you know how this works, Sean. You've been around this town.
All right, so that's what I wanted you to get to. What's the problem?
If it goes to December 19th, which some are talking about, you know how that is. We haven't seen this play before. You have some big bill right before Christmas.
Is there something the next week that you would want to cut a deal for to get out of town, maybe?
Exactly. So I hope that if it's not like December 8th, it's always December 18th, 19th, 20th. It's always right there, right before Christmas. So I would prefer it be, if we're going to do this, do it into January. I think that's probably where the White House is too. I don't know if I've seen, but that just makes more sense. And then let's do the appropriation bills. Let's do our job like we're supposed to. What I also am concerned about is, if we have a vote, I don't want it to pass. So we'll see what the vote is. I mean, if they're going to just get a vote and it's not going to pass, that's one thing. If it's going to pass and we continue giving these subsidies that go primarily to insurance companies, and they're benefiting people who are making like over $200,000 too, I don't know that makes a whole lot of sense. So I want to see the whole package. But I don't dismiss it out of hand. I do think, though, it's important that we not have the deadline be December 19th.
Okay. Congressman Jim Jordan, thanks for all the work that
You
you're
bet.
doing.
You bet.
Appreciate it. Keep it going, man. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
You bet. Great discussion with Jim. Now I'm excited to really get a heads up on what we're about to see in the next few hours from one of the leading pollsters, the president of Cygnal Polling, Brent Buchanan. All right, Brent, good to see you again. This is what I've been waiting for. We are hours from poll closings. Let's start, as I did yesterday, west. We'll go east and then south to north. So in California, is there anything that will be a surprise at all, or is this Proposition 50 in the bag? The Democrats are going to do their redistricting dance, and there's no shot.
Well, it's called the left coast for a reason, Sean, and we got to keep that in mind as we're looking at what they're doing, and it's going to pass. There's a reason that also no money has flowed from the right at all to fight this thing, because it's just a huge lift to take a partisan race in an off-year election in a state that doesn't really do off-year elections and try to get your people to show up.
So can I just ask you, if we go back in time for a second, when this thing came out, everybody in California was bullish. I mean, on the right, and saying we have a history of defeating these propositions. We're going to raise $100 million. And then it just sort of literally fizzled out like a balloon gets popped, right? Why, if you had been called at the beginning of this effort and they said, Brent Buchanan, we'd like to hire Cygnal to do our polling and our effort, strategically, how should we frame this? Would you have just said, hey, guys, thank you, Cygnal doesn't take losing causes? Or would you have said, if we're going to do this, we got to frame it a certain way? I mean, like, was it a lost cause from the jump, or was it just executed poorly?
It's hard to make it not partisan, and partisan issues fail on our side of the aisle in California. Where we win is on economic ballot initiatives, and there's no way to make a redistricting battle an economic ballot initiative. I also think I highly recommend you go read the ballot language, and it's an abomination to our democracy that you're allowed to write partisan ballot language on the ballot itself.
You know, you're the first one that's brought that up. Like, explain what you mean by that, because I can't believe we have gone this far. I am going to admonish myself for this, because what does it say that you find so outrageous?
Well, in most states, they have a requirement that a ballot proposition language of what actually goes on the ballot has to pass certain criteria. So like in Colorado, for example, it has to say if it affects taxes in any way. And this initiative essentially uses partisan language that we're doing this to fight back. And it's disgusting that they allow that to happen in a place that is supposedly protecting democracy.
But isn't that, to be honest with you, that's what their messaging is. So to some extent, they're being honest. They're saying, we're not doing this because we want better representation. I mean, the thing that's fascinating to me about the point you're bringing up is that if you ask some of these guys in Indiana or even Texas or whatever, they'll say, well, the demographics have shifted. We're reflecting the current state of our state by these new districts and the partisan makeup of the state now because of demographic shifts. In California, I would argue to some degree they're being a little bit more honest. They're saying this has nothing to do with representation. We're just blatantly doing this to fight back against Texas because the DOJ made them do it.
Yeah, and they worked really hard to pass an independent redistricting, which let me tell you this, there's not a single independent redistricting commission in the entire country that is independent, neutral, or even center-right. Every one of them is center-left magically.
I love how when the left does something, it's even the groups. Like, you ever listen to the Sunday show, they go, the nonpartisan Center for American Progress. And it's like,
funded by Soros.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's just because, for tax reasons, they're a 501c. That doesn't mean that they're not, ideologically left-leaning. It means that they can't actually advocate for the election defeat of a candidate. But that doesn't mean they're not partisan or ideological. Yeah. It's the way the left frames everything. All right, enough with California. I won't stay up late. So let's go.
Well, you have to stay up for 2 weeks because they don't know how to count ballots.
You honestly don't think? The funny part is, actually, let me ask you this, since you brought this up. I wonder for East Coast television whether Newsom really goes out early and just claims victory because he wants to be on TV.
They always say that the most dangerous place in Washington is between Chuck Schumer and a camera, and I think Gavin Newsom's given him a fight for that title.
That's right. All right. Well, I'll keep an eye. I won't stay up for it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Newsom tries to just do that so he's at least in the news stories, because I think he didn't do all this for nothing. Let's move east to where you and I are in Virginia. Give me the latest lay of the land where we are.
A lot of the polls a few weeks ago showed a much tighter governor's race than the polls in the last, say, 10 days or so. One of the challenges that nobody's talking about in Virginia is that our early vote, and I say our because I live here, I went and voted in Arlington earlier this morning. Our early voting starts way too soon. We start voting in September.
It's insane.
And what happens is the information that is able to get out in the last several weeks of the campaign, there are hundreds of thousands of votes that are already banked by that point. Nobody gets to change them. I mean, I make the argument with folks that we wouldn't have Senator Fetterman if they didn't have early mail-in voting in Pennsylvania start so freaking early like they do in Virginia. And so as I look at, the governor's race and how much tighter it was a few weeks ago, a lot of the difference in the last couple of weeks in the gov race has been the spending differential. And I don't know where the numbers are going to land, but last I checked, it looked like Abigail Spanberger and her allies were going to spend over $60 million. And Winsome Sears and hers, the Republican nominee, were going to be under $30 million, probably closer to $25 million. And it's tough to compete when you're talking about spending differentials like that. And then you've got the Attorney General's race, which is a whole different.
Well, let's just hold on. Can I ask before we move to that? Here's what I got asked this morning. I get you're a pollster, but what I don't understand, and I say this like I kind of do, but I want your take on this because you're in the game. When you're on a campaign or doing something, like obviously everybody's part of the discussion. We control the White House, the House, the Senate, all three constitutional offices in Virginia, and yet being outspent by probably 3-1, if not more, in Virginia. Why is that the case? Like, why? Why are the outside groups? Why is the campaign not raising the money they need?
Well, this may get a bit philosophical, but I believe that the left politics is their religion, and so they're all tithing via Act Blue.
Which is the Act Blue is the Dem little contribution thing that
they have unlimited sums of money essentially in races because these folks who are donating $20, $50, $100 to dozens of candidates, these legislative races that are occurring here are seeing very similar spending differentials for the exact same reason. And I also think that Republicans as a whole have a challenge with fundraising because we're not collectivist like the Democrats are. We're more individualistic. And even though we believe in capitalism, we're not treating our political campaigns in the same way. And we historically have been able to rely on large dollar donors to come in and save the day. But we just don't even have that advantage anymore in a lot of races on the side. And Virginia is also, for folks who don't know, that every state has individual campaign finance laws that are different. And Virginia is the Wild West. So you can take unlimited corporate, unlimited individual. I mean, it's great for somebody like me to make a living in a race versus a state like Colorado that has insanely challenging and tight limits on how much can be given. But it just opens up to people outside Virginia that are Democrat and left-leaning are flowing and funneling money into the state because politics is their religion.
All right. So if you just had a coin, if you had to guess right now, not guess, based on the polls that you've seen right now, you look at the Real Clear Politics average. I get there's a lot of bad polls that are considered in that. They've got Spanberger up, in the high single digits. Where do you guys think that this thing ends up?
Well, there's a couple factors that are going to play into this. And I think the most important one is, what does election day voting in the Southwest look like? So that's the more rural parts of the state down, the mountain range. And they came out incredibly strong for Donald Trump. They were strong for Glenn Youngkin in 2001 or 21 when he won his governor's race. And in Virginia, you can only run one term for some reason. Wish that had been a different constitution piece. But, water under the bridge. If the Southwest does not show up, that probably puts it closer to like a double-digit loss for Winsome Sears. If the Southwest,
which would be
turns
historic,
out,
by the way.
Some of these areas. that have shifted hard to Republicans. Like, interestingly, the People's Republic of Arlington that I live in, South Arlington, that's heavily Hispanic, shifted very strongly towards Donald Trump. East Loudoun County, which you probably heard of Loudoun County because their crazy school and men and women's sports and boys and girls locker rooms issues. East Loudoun County is heavily Asian, mostly South Asian. They shifted hard towards Donald Trump. So I'm looking at those areas and trying to determine, as these returns come in the next hour or so, did those people sit out or did they show up again and did they vote Republican? And so those two factors, I think, drive the difference between an upper single digit loss to a double digit loss.
Okay. But you don't, I mean, that's, you keep saying the degree of loss. Do you see any path where Winsome Sears is the next governor of Virginia?
No.
Okay. So let's move to the lieutenant governor before we get to the attorney general's race that got all this. John Reed's the lieutenant governor nominee. I keep saying that he's like the generic ballot. No one knows who he is. No one knows who his opponent is. Is there any, I know there's been some public polling, but it seems to really claim that race is even. So where does he fall if you had to guess? Does he get pushed over the finish line because maybe people say, I'm voting for Spanberger for governor, but I want to check on her? Or does he fall like she does?
Well, it was really interesting because about 2 months ago, around Labor Day or so, the race was tied. And it was tied because his opponent has a very unique name. And it sounds very Arab. And that was working to his advantage 2 months ago. The problem is she went up on broadcast television across the Commonwealth and has really separated herself and put her ballot share closer to Spanberger. So I would imagine that, whatever Spanberger wins by, the Democratic lieutenant governor nominee probably is, a point or two behind that.
Okay, so let's go down the ballot to the attorney general's race. Before you say anything, Brent Buchanan, I'm sorry. I say to myself, how the heck do people in Virginia vote for an attorney general? This isn't like dog catcher. The guy who's supposed to enforce our laws, you have a choice. The incumbent Republican, Jason Mayaras, who's done a fantastic job, or this guy, Jay Jones, who literally said in a text, I want to kill my political opponent and then watch their child die in his mother's arms. I don't see how anybody in their right mind, Democrat, Republican, say, that's the guy I want enforcing the law in Virginia.
It is a sad state of affairs, and I always like to look at data points, and in my mind, this is a data point about the Democrats. Comparison to another data point. So let's go look at the governor's race in North Carolina last year, Mark Robinson, who said some wild things that were mostly about himself and his ideology. He did not wish death on anybody and got absolutely decimated among Republicans. Because Republicans looked at that and said, we're not going to let that person represent us. Democrats have absolutely no problem sticking together behind somebody who, if we go with what the Bible tells us, what Jesus said the definition of murder was having hate in your heart to start with, I would say that he went a little bit further than hate in his heart on those text messages. So if we're using Jesus as standard for murder, Jay Jones is a murderer, and Democrats are completely fine with that. And if he wins tonight, which I don't think is outside of the realm of possibility, because the challenge with polling a scandal-ridden race, especially when it's the Democrat who's scandal-ridden, is that there are Democrats who marked Jay Jones on that ballot and then pretended they were undecided, which is why I always pay attention to the ballot share of the candidate who doesn't have the scandal and where is that moving. And I think Jason Miyares has a good shot tonight. I mean, he's run a phenomenal campaign. He's the sitting attorney general. It's a seat you can run for more than one time in Virginia. But if he loses tonight, it'll be those, embarrassed yet highly partisan murder condoning Democrats who are willing to put aside decency over what's good for the Commonwealth or our families or children in Virginia. And it's disgusting, but look at the data point. Republicans are willing to condemn their own when they say ridiculous things. This guy did way worse than what Mark Robinson ever said, and he still has a chance of winning.
So if you're Jason Mayaris, what do you need to see tonight to win? Is it that you need Abigail Spanberger only to be ahead by a few points to win some Sears?
It helps. I think he could get up. I think Spanberger could be upwards of 10 points ahead of Winsome Sears and Jason Miyares, the Republican nominee for AG, win. But you need a combination of split vote and undervote. And what I mean by undervote is people skip that race. So they vote for Gov, they vote for Lieutenant Gov, they skip Attorney General, and they keep going down the ballot. He needs a combination of both of those things.
Tomorrow, a lot of people are going to be looking at the margin of victory and who did where and where. I mean, to your point, Southwest Virginia, Loudoun County, et cetera, in Virginia in particular. Are you as a pollster going to look at this list of polls and say, wow, this is who was like closest to the pin and this is who was nuts? Because I see some of these polls saying that Spanberger's up 12 points. I got to believe that's not right. But do you guys wake up and look at who was actually more accurate as a pollster, or is that something that I'll just do?
You know, these off-year elections and even midterms to an extent are a bit challenging to poll because polling starts with projecting the electorate. So you could get all the right responses from all the people you think are in the electorate, and if you project the electorate incorrectly, then your correct responses get the wrong result. And so that's really the art behind polling at this point, especially in off-year elections, is how are you projecting the electorate? And so what I would recommend is if you are going to, nerd out on where these races ended up compared to polling, is you really can only look at things within the last 10 to 14 days.
Right.
Anything before that's not necessarily predictive. Albeit the science of statistics is actually not prediction anyways in and of itself. That's a whole different story. But go look at how they comprise their electorate. Look at what percent of the electorate did they say was going to be college educated versus non-college educated? Because I've seen some polls in Virginia that have college education expectation of turnout, above the census number, which rarely happens that you get these drastic swings. So, and then others where it's saying it's going to be 50-50, 50 non-college, 50 college. And, the age breaks and others have an impact on that. But polling can still be directionally helpful. I think as you look at these, especially the AG's race is going to be the one where you're probably going to see the most surprises because of the scandal-ridden aspect of Jay Jones and those, semi-embarrassed but still murder-condoning Democratic voters.
All right, let's move north to New Jersey. Does Jack Ciattarelli have a shot tonight?
He's got a much better shot than Winsome
That's
Sears.
like Dumb and Dumber. See, you're saying there's a chance. But I mean, what should I look for in New Jersey tonight at 8:00 when polls close?
A lot of what swung New Jersey hard, New Jersey had, I believe, the largest swing to the right of any state in the nation, with New York State right behind it in the 24 presidential election compared to the COVID anomalistic 2020 election. And what swung New Jersey was a lot of the heavy Hispanic areas. Trump did even better than the prior election among non-college white voters, but it was really the non-college, non-white voters that made that swing. So you're going to be looking at where those precincts or those counties like Passaic County in New Jersey, are those Hispanic voters showing up? Because if they are, they're probably voting for Ciattarelli. But if they stay home, it's because they're frustrated at Republicans and they can't stomach voting for Democrats. And so that's going to be a large driver. It was a Harris +6 state last go around. Ciattarelli did really well in 2021 in the last governor's race against an incumbent. But you could also make the argument that running against an unpopular incumbent is easier than running against an open seat Democrat. But I'll say that Mikey Sherrill is a pretty lackluster Democratic candidate. She came out of the chute hot and has been not that impressive. And so if Ciattarelli wins, it'll be the combination of Sherrill being a bad Democratic candidate and these areas that shifted hard to Trump actually show up in an off-year election.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question that I asked to Jim McLaughlin yesterday. Like, I think when we go even further north to New York, that it's a crapshoot. I don't understand. You keep talking about these models, right? And I think I like to pretend that I know a little bit about this stuff, but I always say that this is what Brent Buchanan said. But you're right. When you talk about the model, like how many college age do you vote? What percentage of people voted for Trump? If you get the model wrong, then everything else falls apart. I don't understand how anybody can model New York because all the pieces of the board are in the wrong place, right? You've got the crazy progressive terrorist loving guy serving as the Democratic nominee, the scandal plague establishment Democrat as the independent, and then Curtis Lewa hanging on. To me, this is a joke that anybody's trying to actually tell you how it's going to turn out.
Well, and then you throw their ballot on top of that. I mean, go Google or put in ChatGPT or whatever your preferred technology is. Go look at the New York City mayor's ballot, and you tell me if you can figure out how you're supposed to vote.
Just to give people some perspective, what you're referring to is that there's multiple lines, right? So you can be the working families line, the libertarian line, the conservative line, and you can run on multiple lines, and then all of your vote gets added together. So you could only get 10 votes as a Democrat, 30 votes as working families, and now you get 35 votes, right? I mean, that's what's so weird about it.
Yeah, it's very confusing, and I'm pretty sure Cuomo's only on there twice, and he's in the far bottom right corner, and Mandami is all over the place at the very top at the left where you're reading left to right if you're an American, which there's not many of them in New York City, which is a whole different issue. But, I look at New York and say, this is what happens when you import the third world. You get the third world. And we're going to see that in this voting today. I do think it's going to be a little bit closer than some of these polls have showed. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be some 20-point blowout like it looked like it was going to be a week or two ago. But then I look at, somebody like Mandami, who's been a shapeshifter, and you got to ask yourself, like, is he actually going to govern like this, or is he just saying this crap to get elected? And then he's going to do one or two small things and really not be that big of a force. And it's something Republicans are watching because you're already seeing this come out of the committees here in Washington. They're trying to tie every Democrat to Mandami, and which I think is a dangerous thing to start with until we see that more people outside of the political bubble, people who pay attention to off-year elections, actually know who the guy is and the danger that his ideology poses.
Last question, though. But the bottom line is you don't see any scenario. I agree with you wholeheartedly, by the way. I think Cuomo is going to perform a lot closer than people thought. But, I actually think it could be 3 or 4%. Like he could keep this thing tight but loses. But at least on what you've seen, you don't see any scenario. And I don't mean to put it this way because I hate when people ask these kind of questions. Is it your opinion that Mandami wins? It's just a question of how much?
Yes, I do think Mandami wins. The question is, are we talking 5 points or 10 points or 14 points? And I talk a lot about this in my upcoming book, America's Emotional Divide. Thank you for the endorsement of it, Sean.
Well deserved.
The power of emotions behind these things, because the young vote in New York City, there's no logic behind supporting somebody like Mandami, but the enthusiasm that exists for the frustration that young people are feeling and how the system is broken and does not work for them, and they're willing to blow up the system in order to fix the system, is what's driving this New York mayor's race. And if it was logical, Cuomo would be ahead by 10 points at this point.
Yeah, that's what I honestly, like, I still, policies aside, what I can't find is that this guy who hangs out with terrorists, who hangs out with communists, people are okay with it or willing to think that that's not a problem. Anyway, Brent, enjoy the rest of the night. I know you'll be geeking out like I will. So, and hopefully we're both wrong in Virginia, because I got to hope that we don't go down the rabbit hole of Abigail Spanberger. But anyway, thank you for being here. Always appreciate it. And like when you're ready to roll out the book full form, let's do it.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean.
You bet. All right, guys, you heard it all there. We're going to start to break it all down in the next couple hours. Join us live at 8 p.m. Eastern time on my YouTube channel. We'll have Dan Turrentine, Batya Ungar-Sargon to start breaking down all the results as they come in. I've got a great newsletter out tonight at SeanSpicer.com. Obviously, we'll have all the results tomorrow after the live event tonight, obviously. But join us tomorrow. Again, great week ahead. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.